So it's not like, are we live? Are we live? Are we live? Are we live?
Are we
Are we
live?
live? Hey gang, it's Wednesday, right around 1. I'm Dawn, your food director here at Real Simple. This is Real Simple Cooking School. I have a very special guest today. Pamela Salzman is here. She's a cookbook author, cooking teacher, author of this awesome book, Kitchen Matters. And Pamela has a ton of great tips for prepping ahead. We know a lot of you guys are super interested in meal prep, getting set up for the week ahead. So Pamela's going to help us out and take us through some of her genius ideas.
Great, thanks. So happy to be here.
Pamela, before we get started, we just review the rules. We have 2.5 rules here in the program. 1, we wash our hands. We can do that in a second. 2, we silence our phones. That's the new rule. And 3, we play nice. This is a constructive teaching kitchen, and we aim to keep it that way. If you don't have anything nice to say, you are now dismissed. Stay chill in the chat. Keep it cool, okay? Great. That's how we do it.
I love that.
I am actually going to wash my hands right now.
Great.
So Pamela,
Just so everybody knows, I already washed my hands.
Yeah.
Just FYI.
She did.
So in case you think I'm a rule breaker from the beginning, not true. I already washed my hands. So go
so
ahead.
hands are clean. So Pamela, Pamela sent over a bunch of great ideas, sort of bigger batch things you can make on the weekend to get you through the week. We thought we're going to talk about a bunch of them as we go along. Hi, Instagram. But we're going to start with just a big batch of grains.
Yeah.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit about like your food philosophy.
Sure.
We're going to use quinoa today.
Which I love. So basically my food philosophy is really very simple. I mean, I eat everything. I'm not on any kind of restricted diet, so to speak, but I do emphasize in my cooking classes and in my cookbook and on my blog, real food. Okay, it's pretty simple. I also emphasize anti-inflammatory as much as possible and a lower glycemic diet. I mean, it just makes us feel in our best health day to day.
And like, what does anti-inflammatory mean? Because I feel like that term is thrown around a lot,
I
and
mean,
like, I don't really even know.
It means really staying away from pro-inflammatory foods like artificial colors and flavors and artificial sweeteners and deep fried foods and sugar, sadly, and seed oils and just things that are super refined and super processed. And it doesn't mean that you can never have any of those foods ever. It just means that you have to focus more on anti-inflammatory foods. So like your whole vegetables, your whole grains, your cold water fish, your nuts and seeds, things like that.
So it's kind of obvious.
It's obvious to us. Some people don't want to hear that. They want to find somebody that tells them like, yeah, just drink like 6 drinks a night and like have all the sugar you want and just, you know, as long as you don't eat too much fat, it's just, that doesn't work.
Right. So it's like a focus on whole foods.
Yeah.
And eliminating the more refined, more processed stuff.
Totally. I mean, that's just like a great start. You're 75% of the way there if you just do that.
Okay, cool. So big batch of grains. We're going to use quinoa, which you guys know it's a seed, not a grain.
Technically, yeah.
So one of Pamela's tips, you do like to rinse it.
I do, and sometimes people have an issue with quinoa, like they don't love the flavor of it. And I think something that can help them like it more
I'm just gonna rinse it.
Yeah,
while
you
Pamela
go rinse.
keeps
Is if they do rinse it. And so Dawn is using a fine mesh sieve. I don't know if you guys saw, but quinoa is super, super tiny. So if you stick quinoa in your colander and then go rinse it, it's all going to come through the colander. But the purpose is to rinse off this natural coating on the quinoa that does have a slightly bitter flavor. It's called saponin. Anyway, so if you do that quick rinse, it takes 2 seconds. Yeah.
See how they're little. And this is very fine mesh. I think you can see that. So like not the spaghetti colander.
Totally. So super fine. And that way the quinoa stays in there. And so when you give it that rinse, it really helps to kind of cut that bitterness.
Yeah.
So that is a good step.
Now,
yeah.
I was just going to go for it, but then I realized I wasn't sure. So when I cook quinoa, I bring the water to a boil first, and then I add it. How do you do it?
I just put it all at the same time.
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
So cup of quinoa, and then how much water do we have?
Okay, so on the bags, they all say like 1 cup of quinoa and 2 cups of water. It's not correct. So it makes it mushy. It makes it too soggy and watery. I like to go 1 3/4 cups of water to 2 cups of quinoa. But also, it's kind of like when you're cooking rice. you don't want to use a pot that is inappropriately large or too small. So if you put this in a pasta pot, for example, your quinoa is going to end up kind of hard because all the water is going to evaporate before it's cooked. So you have to find like the right size pot, which is like that.
Speaking of right size pot, if you say like can't find a lid or forgot that you maybe needed one for this thing, you can use a shiitake as a lid.
Totally.
But how do you feel about salting your grains?
I like to salt them,
Yeah,
just
me
a
too.
pinch. So, I use quinoa for both savory and sweet preparations,
Yeah.
but the salt won't affect that. So I generally only cook it in water for that reason, just so I could have some flexibility with it. If you know that you love chicken broth, quinoa, then go ahead and do your chicken broth or your veggie stock, but I like to just do water, pinch of salt, and we're good to go.
And so bring it up to a boil and then cover it for your method? Okay.
Bring it up to a boil. I mean, you could partially cover it if you really need that water to come up to a boil more quickly, but I kind of just like to keep it covered so I can see what's happening. I mean, how many people have seen their rice or their whatever overflow because they weren't watching it?
Never me, never. You guys haven't even seen me do that here.
Well, I've done it 100 times.
Okay, so we got the quinoa on. So then we're gonna make today your not fried rice. So tell us a little bit about that.
So I'm the queen of reusing and repurposing leftovers. I hate wasting food. I really try to almost never do it. And this does two things. It, number one, can use up whatever I want in the refrigerator. Grains, meat, eggs, veggies, literally anything. One mushroom, I'll throw it in there. So number one, it's good for that. Number two, it's really fast, especially if you have your quinoa or your rice already cooked. Okay, that's number two. And number three, it's really easy to make for just one person. So if I'm home by myself for lunch, whatever, I can make it really quickly, or I can make it for 4 to 6 people easy.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And one of the things I loved about this recipe is how adaptable it is. So you give a lot of options in your book, and then Brooke, maybe you can drop the link to the recipe in the comments. You'll see Pamela gives a bunch of different variations, whether it's like the vegetables you use or the flavor profiles you use. So you want to tell us a little bit about that and maybe like what the stuff we've got here.
I mean, really, they're just suggestions. I pretty much have never made this the same way twice. I like how you're stripping the kale, by the way. And it's a great tip for people.
We can review as we're doing it.
Yeah.
So
just in terms of the flavor profiles, it can just be so many different ways, but what you definitely want to start with is like a good flavor booster like garlic, and sometimes I like to add crushed red chili peppers, so that just gives a little oomph, but then it doesn't have to be like an Asian fried rice.
Right.
I think when people think of fried rice, they think, soy sauce and ginger and whatever, and it doesn't have to be
that's a really good
like
point.
that. So once you get the formula down in terms of, okay, I know that I need cooked, cold grains. I know I need a little bit of veggies.
Yeah.
Then you can adjust. So I've done it Italian style with like cherry tomatoes and basil and, topped with like Parmesan cheese. Or I've done sort of like a Thai version with, those flavor profiles. It's just, it's so easy to customize.
So what we have today, we've got some curly kale, and you guys have seen me do this like maybe 100 times. But remember, just to review, we're gonna grab the stem end with your non-dominant hand, and just pull back, and you've got the leaves and you've got the stem. Stem goes into compost or into your stock bag in the freezer. I'm just gonna give these a tear. Is that cool?
Yep.
Just so these are ultimately gonna get wilted, so a little bit smaller makes that happen a little bit faster.
For sure.
One more time, stem in my non-dominant hand. I'm a righty, and we just pull back. See this? Works for, Natasha loves it. This works for lacinato kale. If you've got that, it works for thyme and rosemary. Anything with like a sturdy stem, it'll work for. And I got one more. But what else do we have here? We have some asparagus.
So we have some asparagus, which is coming into season right now, and I love using everything seasonal. It's just going to taste better. It's going to be more nutritious if it didn't come from far away. And, something else that I think is important that people don't realize about eating seasonally is that you get what you need from nature at exactly the right time of year. So right now is spring, and we like to focus on actually cleansing foods. This is the cleansing time of nature. So all of those dark green leafies and those herbs, and actually asparagus is a cleansing vegetable, radishes, so they really help purge the body of like excess like fat and just toxins. So parsley, lemon, all of these are really cleansing foods, and they're in season right now.
Right.
So asparagus is in season right now. Here's something I like to do when I get home from the market. Okay, so I'm not necessarily cooking this right away. I get home from the market and I make a fresh cut like this in the whole bunch. And I actually use these bottoms for veggie stock, so I'll put it in my veggie stock bag in the freezer or the fridge. And then I take this and I'll put it in a big jar or even like a small bowl with an inch of water. And then this goes into the fridge until you're ready to use it. The asparagus stays so much fresher, I kid you not, and sometimes it might even grow. It's bananas. So
Science project!
you should try it, yeah. So then when we're ready to work with it, we gotta wash it, we'll dry it, and then I like to just snap off the ends like this, like kind of manually, and it just forms this natural break where the asparagus goes from being tough to being tender. And it's really easy to do that.
You can go trash bowl there.
Perfect.
And I think the snapping asparagus the same way I think about like green beans, really good job for kids.
Totally.
Or less experienced friends or family members who just like want to get involved.
What can I do?
Yeah, what can I do? That's a great task. Those who like might be intimidated to say chop garlic or something.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, so Pamela, while you snap, we also have shiitake mushrooms here.
Okay, these are my favorites. I mean, I love all mushrooms, but the Japanese mushrooms actually have more nutrition than regular mushrooms. They have B vitamins, they actually have less water too, so they have a more mushroomy flavor, but they actually have anti-cancer compounds, anti-tumor compounds, so they're really good for you. So shiitakes are one of the easiest ones to find. I tend to use them a lot, and this is exactly how I prep them. I take a damp paper towel, we wipe them clean.
Just like made a square.
Yeah. Wipe them clean, and what this does is instead of washing the mushrooms under running water, which will then cause the mushrooms to just absorb water because they're super spongy, this prevents them from, again, absorbing that water and becoming super spongy. So they absorb other flavors. And you can really get that flavor of the mushroom and like the garlic and all the other veggies. So that's why we do this.
And I will say, like, most mushrooms that you guys are going to find in the grocery store are cultivated, so they're actually going to be pretty clean.
True.
But like if you find mushrooms at the farmer's market, you might have to get in there.
Yeah.
You might have to get in there with, you can find a mushroom brush, which is fussy. But if they're like really, really like fresh from the field, I will plunge them in water. Just be real quick about it. So don't like go soaking them and running to do the laundry. And then I'm going to trim the stems, yeah?
Yeah, let's trim the stems. They can be a little on the tough side, so those definitely go in my veggie scraps pile. So those are fantastic in vegetable stock. I love that. I'm going to cut these into like 1-inch pieces.
And then sliced, whole, sliced?
Yeah,
okay,
sliced. Cool. Now, I mean, I think we might talk about this later if we have time, but this is also a great recipe to use frozen vegetables. I think I'm the president of the frozen vegetable fan club because there are no presidents of that fan club.
No.
And there should be.
Green Giant, get a number.
Yeah, they should be because frozen vegetables are just as nutritious as fresh most of the time. Definitely way better than canned. I mean, they're flash frozen, they've been cleaned, they've also been blanched. So blanching means you like give it a quick dunk in boiling water and then you pull it out and you shock it in ice water and the cooking process stops. It locks in the vitamins and minerals and then they're partially cooked. So they will get warmed up quickly or cooked quickly in a stir fry or in a soup and they're easy to find. So I have found some great mixed mushrooms that are frozen, which would be fantastic here.
And I will say, if you guys, I hope that you're cooking more and more at home, it is really important and a good idea to cook with other cooks, like cook with your friends, your family members who like to cook, because even just chatting on the phone with Pamela, like I didn't realize that frozen mushrooms were a thing. We all get kind of stuck in our, I'm not going to say ruts, but like our patterns. So it's like frozen peas, frozen peas, frozen peas.
For sure.
But talk to your friends who love to cook, engage with the Real Simple Cooking School community, and find out what you guys are using, because you'll never know what you didn't know.
Right. I mean, actually, I've learned a lot about what can be frozen.
Yeah.
by just perusing the freezer section of the supermarket. I mean, I'm like, oh, wait. That's so interesting. I never thought that I could freeze oatmeal, but it's there. Or, you know, I didn't think that I could freeze a burrito, but I see it here. So that's how I kind of learn. But also keep in mind what I mentioned about the frozen vegetables having been blanched. If you have some kind of languishing in your crisper drawer, don't stick them in the freezer. That's not how it works. You can blanch them first and then shock them in ice water and then freeze them, but the cellular structure gets a little wonky if you just kind of stick fresh into the freezer.
And then speaking of frozen,
Yeah.
Pamela was also telling me that you'll freeze your grains also, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you do that?
I freeze my grains. I don't freeze gigantic batches of them. The same way I don't freeze gigantic batches of a soup or stock. I freeze kind of the amount that I might use.
Okay.
So the best way to freeze them actually is once they've cooled down, you can go from the counter or from the fridge to the freezer. A resealable bag is really a great way to do it because then you can kind of like break up a little bit of it and then dump. And that's another thing that I learned from perusing the freezer section.
Yeah.
There's frozen grains in there. It was like eye-opening to me. So anytime I had some leftover rice or leftover quinoa, I would just like shove it in the freezer.
Yeah. And Pamela also mentioned this really smart thing, which you're kind of alluding to, is when you guys are going shopping, and what I'd like to do is take this program out in the world and go shopping with you guys. Anything you see packaged, like you can make and package yourself. You know, so like the frozen burritos, the grains, the frozen vegetables. So like anything that's coming pre-made, whether it's like refrigerated or frozen, you can make it yourself. Which is a good thing for me to do my homework for our Make It Yourself column. So many new ideas coming your way. Okay, so we've got our mushroom slice, we've got asparagus chopped, and then we have some tomatoes.
Perfect. I'm gonna go give these a rinse. And then my only tip for slicing tomatoes, serrated knife.
Yeah, great tip.
Yeah.
We have, I'm still here, we've talked about that before. Let me see, these are the nice knives that they let me use. Serrated knife, remember that's just the one with the teeth. Great for like soft-skinned fruits.
Yep.
Tomato, technically a fruit, or vegetables. It'll give you a little more traction.
And plus, honestly, I teach in people's kitchens literally every single day, like private kitchens. And most people's knives are not that sharp.
Yes.
So if you don't have a sharp knife, like really you need to use a serrated for something like this.
I will say, I just got my knives at home sharpened. Mm-hmm. Embarrassing how dull they were. It makes a huge difference. I mean, it's just, I realized how like irritable I was getting during meal prep because it was like, you really gotta get after it. Even chopping an onion was like arduous.
It changes your experience, you know. And so at this one thing that like, it was like literally one of the top 3 things that I learned teaching in other people's kitchen. I teach the same thing every day for a month, and I have different experiences with the same recipes in different kitchens. Yeah. And most of it has to do with like how sharp the knives are and how, you know, the kitchen is set up and how well lit it is or how cluttered it is. So it can really affect, you know, your experience and how much fun you're gonna have.
Yeah. Do you want me to chop this garlic?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. Okay, and so I just started to heat up our skillet back here.
Awesome.
When Pamela got here, I was like, ooh, we have a wok. Should we use it? But she also brought up a good point about the wok.
So when I've used woks in my classes, even though I love them, and one of the reasons I love them is that they have such great surface area, so you can cook things super quickly, whether it's a lot of stuff or a little bit of stuff. So they're great for that. But people always ask me, well, can I do this without a wok? Yes, you can. You just need a really big skillet. So the larger the skillet you have, the more quickly everything will get heat and will cook. So stir fries in general, the way that we're doing this right now is the way you should be doing it at home. Everything should be prepped and ready to go. So we could have done this earlier. So like you could do it before you go to work in the morning or the night before, and you can kind of package this up and put it in the refrigerator until you're ready to go. And for sure with your grains, if you're gonna do any kind of a unfried rice like we're doing today, you do want the grains to be cold. They can come right out of the freezer, but they shouldn't be hot because then this dish gets a little bit sticky. It's kind of a dish that's really made for leftovers, you know?
Yes.
So
guys, I'm getting really good at planning this thing. So I made this actually just this morning, but I spread it out on a rim baking sheet. that's gonna just help it cool a little bit faster. And then just in the interest of time and like this demo, I stuck it in the fridge because that will kind of dry out any residual moisture, which is the point here. So this is ready to go. I am going to actually, I grabbed this 12-inch skillet. Guys, this is the size that I think you should have. Like all-purpose skillet, whether cast iron or stainless. But we have like kind of a lot of stuff just because things are feeling abundant. So I'm gonna get an even bigger skillet.
Yeah,
but just know that in your 12-inch, or even if you have like a 10-inch, plan accordingly. So maybe this was a cup and a half of quinoa that we happen to have that I cooked. But you know, smaller skillet, less stuff.
For sure. Now also when you're doing a stir fry, again, it doesn't have to be just this grain and veggie stir fry. It can be a meat stir fry with veg or something. If you're gonna double something, generally you can't double it and do it in one batch in that skillet. You have to either do it in 2 batches, right, in the same skillet, or you do it simultaneously in 2 skillets or in 2 woks.
Working the 1s and 2s. Still knows what I mean. Okay, so I got my skillet heating up.
Great.
We have vegetable oil and olive oil. What's your preference?
I like olive oil. I'm kind of an olive oil girl, yeah.
Totally fine.
Excellent.
And okay, now one of the things Pamela talks about just in her life is, and one of the things that we talk about here is using your inactive time. So one of the things, the questions you ask yourself is like, what can I do right now? Like, I knew I was making my big batch of quinoa, great, so I could chop all my veg. And you could do that over the weekend.
100%.
For the week. That said, just want to reiterate what Pamela said, stir fry is not the time because you don't have any inactive time. Once you start, things are hitting the pan every couple minutes and you are sauteing, but that's what makes it happen so fast, okay? So this is one of those times where like you gotta get organized. Mise en place, right? Everything in its place.
That was an HQ question last night, by the way.
We have not been able to get past question 4 in like 8 days.
I know, guys, that's why I was really bummed when it was like question 8 and I was like, I just got out on question 7 and I knew it.
Scott Rogowski, if you are watching, please come on this program. Please, please,
Okay,
please.
we digress.
Anywho, I'm getting my skillet nice and hot. Phil and Natasha and Rebecca, you wanna come on back? Okay, and then let's talk like order of operations. What goes first?
Okay, so the grains actually end up going in pretty much last. So we want anything that needs to get cooked first.
Okay.
I mean, it's always fine to start with, garlic, but you have to kind of know that it's going to take 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And so if you put the garlic in, everything has to be super ready to go, and then, just pile it in.
Okay.
So we can start with garlic. You could also do garlic and mushrooms. If you want.
Let's do garlic and mushrooms.
Yeah, let's do it. Just kind of get things going.
I'll stir and you dump. Is that cool?
You stir, I dump. Okay, got it.
Okay, and guys, just a reminder, do you see how hot that oil was? Sizzled as soon as I went in. And like Pamela said, garlic, you gotta kind of be ready to go with the next thing because it will burn. And once it burns, it gets nasty and bitter and makes the whole thing taste gross.
Yeah. That's
and you kind of got to wipe it out and start over.
And mushrooms will start to absorb that oil, but just, trust and have faith that they will start to release moisture and, they'll be fine eventually. Just kind of even let them sit for a bit. But if your pan wasn't hot, then everything that you put in it is just going to start soaking oil, and it's not really going to cook properly.
Are you a seasoned mushrooms now, or are you a seasoned mushrooms later?
Depends on the
Good
dish.
answer. Good
Yeah,
answer.
it depends on the dish because the water will kind of make the moisture come out of them. But it would be fine to season now.
Okay.
But we can also season once we add the other vegetables too.
Okay, cool.
But seasoning is something that is important, and I am not like light-handed with salt and pepper because I think it just makes everything taste better.
Yeah.
And as long as you're using a good quality salt, so that's the key. So nothing with like added aluminum or dextrose so basically that's your table salt, right?
Yeah.
So I don't like to use that. I think it makes everything taste kind of metallic.
And we've been having a lot of salt conversations around here lately. You guys know that our recipes generally call for kosher salt. The reason we choose to use that and choose to call for it is because it's consistent. So we know when we call for it, the results that you guys are going to get at home. But remember, we've talked about this before, all kosher salts are not created equal, okay? So
Yeah.
Diamond kosher salt is the least salty. It's my preference.
That's the one I use too.
It's half as salty as table salt.
But it also has no additives. So that's why I like it. I mean, you know, salt, believe it or not, those boxes, they have ingredient labels, and it should just say salt.
It should just say salt. That said, sea salt is great, but I think it takes a little more experience to season sort of like confidently and effectively with sea salt, whether it's fine or coarse, just because it doesn't behave the same way as kosher salt, which is really what most recipes are written using.
Yeah, I use just a normal fine sea salt. The coarse one is...
It's like a pretzel.
Yeah, it just doesn't have enough like flexibility for me with the coarse one because it doesn't melt.
Right.
So you're not going to season anything that's not cooking for a really long period of time. So I just end up sticking with
Asparagus
overboard. I just end up cooking with, you know, the fine one all the time. And then the flaky one is an amazing ingredient, but it's really for finishing.
Yes,
So,
yes.
you know, I love it, but it's really for finishing.
Okay, so how are we doing here?
We're doing great.
So you guys can see the mushrooms are starting to kind of, ooh, the dancing asparagus here. Do you guys see that? The mushrooms are already starting to soften, take on some color. The asparagus is turning bright green.
A little more oil.
Little more oil. See, guys, don't be afraid. Remember, I mean, I didn't measure this, but know that like the recipe is a guideline, and basically we're looking at the scale thing like things are looking kind of dry. We don't want the garlic to start to burn. Add a little more fat to keep things moving.
And because we've cut everything pretty small, then they should be able to cook quickly. And I'm also a big fan of trying to figure out which vegetables are going to be cooking kind of the same amount of time. So this is not really the place for big chunks of like butternut squash or big chunks of sweet potato or even like humongous pieces of cauliflower. Those are all pretty dense and they're not going to cook quickly. So stir fry is really for quick cooking vegetables and things or pre-cooked things. So if you have leftovers from the night before, awesome. You'll kind of add them at the end because they're already ready to go. Speaking of ready to go, let's add our tomatoes.
Tomatoes are going to go in. Gorgeous.
Love.
I happen to find these, like this mixed bag of cherries with some golds and some reds and some sort of deeper red. Don't worry about it. Like whatever you find is good.
100%.
Now, quinoa is looking actually pretty awesome. And Pamela and I were talking about this. We both like to let the quinoa sit off the heat, covered. I usually do it for 10 minutes just because it's like an easy round number for me to remember. But I also always look, see how you start to get these little, like volcano things. It looks like at the beach, you know, when the water comes up and it goes away and those things like burrow down and they're the little, you know what I'm talking about? Anyway, quinoa, when it's done, tends to get those little air pockets. That is a good indicator for me. I've never seen it written about anywhere, but you heard it here first, okay? So we're gonna just set it back there, pretend it's Sunday, you did this, grains are ready to go. Other grains people could use for this?
Anything, like literally anything. My go-to are, besides quinoa, brown rice, barley, lentils, which is not really a grain, but I use lentils.
I like the idea of lentils in there.
Because some people are now grain-free.
Yeah.
Also, something that people don't eat, but I really love it, and it's an awesome alkalizing grain, is millet.
Yeah.
Which is gluten-free, right? So some people who are gluten-free can do that, and it sort of has this like couscous kind of quality about
Very
it,
cool.
you know? All right, how about some kale?
Looks so good.
Yeah,
okay,
looks
kale's
so good.
going in. Tell me when to stop.
I think we'll just do a little bit, like, you know, perfect.
A little of that.
Yeah,
A little more.
awesome.
So there's good news and bad news. It's the same that I'm really hungry. So I'm very much looking forward to this.
Great. So we just want to wilt this a little bit, and then we put in our quinoa. And if you had any frozen or some leftover roasted veggies from the night before, even if it's like a tablespoon or a quarter of a cup, this is the time to throw it in because it's already cooked, right? So I'll season this up one last time. And And, you know, we could finish this any number of ways. We could finish this with a little bit of basil, right? We could finish this with some hot sauce. We could top it with a fried egg. We could add, you know, mixed grains. It doesn't have to be one grain either. But where kale is getting nice and wilty, Swiss chard could be great here. Oh, a little Parmesan cheese on top could also be great. Okay, so this looks good to me.
Awesome.
So now we'll just add in, I'm the dumper, right?
Okay, you're the dumper, yeah.
The dumper.
I'll go back to stirring.
Okay. And we're pretty much ready to go. We'll just add one more kind of pinch of salt. And you can go, here's another tip. I know I could literally do this all day long. And then you could do this. You could also do part grain and part cauliflower rice.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's all the rage, and honestly, I'm a huge fan. I love it. So if you're just trying to cut back on carbohydrates, or if you have another carbohydrate at dinner, you could start doing your cauliflower rice in the beginning, and it could be fresh or frozen, and then you could just go halvesies with your grain.
And also, like, you guys know that I love to hate the hype. Like, if it's a trendy, new, popular thing, forget it. I'm over it before it even started. However, I am kind of like getting behind the cauliflower rice thing just because it's a good way to get more vegetables and more fiber. Yep. So without it feeling like I gotta cook a whole nother thing, right? So
because it's not like a weird processed food. It's literally cauliflower. And even though it is so easy to make cauliflower rice, you take your florets, you pulse them in a food processor, you're done. I love having it frozen on hand.
Yeah.
Love. It's just fast and easy.
Which you told me you could buy at Costco.
You can buy it anywhere now. It's amazing.
Guys,
it's totally
Costco
on mass market.
rice.
We're going to taste this before we get started because we always taste our food before we serve it because you never know if it needs extra seasoning. We didn't put the chili flakes in. I just realized that. But
it's very delicious.
It's good.
The mushrooms add a ton of flavor, and the tomatoes both bringing some umami, right? That fifth savory flavor. It feels like righteous and healthy. It looks beautiful.
What do you have in this case here? Any basil? No, not really.
David, what do we have in here? Anything we can use?
We have mustard greens.
Okay.
All right, it's all good.
Sorrel.
Shiso. We have like some fancy stuff.
Yeah, fancy. Anyway, I was looking for basil, but it's all good. Doesn't matter.
Add an herb at this point. You could top it with like 4 fried eggs, bring it right to the table like this. Let's serve it up though.
And again, or I'll help you. And if you know, it's just a way to use leftovers. If you had like one chicken leg from last night, shred
That's a great point.
Add it in here. If it's cooked, it goes in at the end. So really, this is super, super flexible. It's really good for you. The quinoa itself has all the essential amino acids, so it does have enough protein. So you could eat this on your own, and you don't have to add anything else. But you know, if you felt like you needed some crunch or some extra protein, some pine nuts here are great. Some Parmesan cheese, like I said, even some feta.
Yum.
Feta makes everything better. So yeah, there's that too.
And just lightning round while we have it. Guys, this was so fast. Like we made like this whole huge beautiful dish in like 30 minutes. So file that away.
We were like chatting a lot, like
gabbing.
If you weren't chatting with one of us, you could probably make it in 20 minutes.
For sure. So just a couple of your other favorite things to make ahead. One thing we talked about was chili. What can you do with it?
So besides just obviously eating it the traditional way, I like to top leftovers onto baked potatoes or baked sweet potatoes. I like to make what's called like a chili lasagna. And you can just layer your chili because it should be pretty thick, and then layer it with corn tortillas the same way you would use lasagna noodles, and then top the rest with, you know, the topping with cheese, and then bake it that you would like a lasagna. So that's great too. And what were some of the other things?
The smartest thing, not the smartest thing, one of the cool things was just like kind of turning it into tortilla soup.
That's right, turning it into soup. Oh, this I do with tons of leftovers. Pretty much like anything that was a casserole, if I don't have enough for like a full meal the next day, I'll chop everything up into small pieces, dump it in a pot, and then pour enough stock on it to make it look like soup. And that can be up to you. If you like it thick, you like it thin, you have veggie stock, you have chicken stock, whatever, and all of a sudden you have another meal. So you could add little tortillas to that, and then you have tortilla soup.
So just like stretching those bits and pieces is like one of the things you do best, I think.
Thanks. I try.
And okay, pesto was another one.
Pesto is another one. I mean, pesto, we could sort of sit here all day and
Yes.
name all the ways that you could use pesto. It freezes amazingly well, defrosts really quickly. You could use any combinations of herbs and greens. It's really good for you.
Yeah.
You can make it with or without cheese, any kind of nut. And then I use that like not just on pasta, but I use it in quesadillas. I use it on toast. I use it on baked potatoes. I use it stirred into soup. I actually could have used it in
Yes,
here.
as a finisher.
I've done it with, cauliflower rice and quinoa, stir in the pesto, and then, add some spinach, and that's a meal right there.
Pesto is one of those things, you guys have heard me talk about the vinaigrette like over and over and over again, which is one of Pamela's other great things to have on hand. But pesto, like think of it like salad dressing. You can thin it with vinegar and it is salad dressing, but like make it, have it, and it just improves so many dishes just by infinite exponents.
And
math.
infinite ways. I mean,
Yeah.
stirred into like mayo for a quick pesto aioli. I mean, it's just, there's so many things you can, it's just bursting with flavor. So I love it.
Yeah.
I also do like a lot of poached chicken or
Yes.
Instant Pot chicken. So, I use my Instant Pot once in a while, so you can have just kind of cooked chicken on hand,
Yes.
throw it into soups, throw it into like a stir fry like this, put it on sandwiches for the kids' lunch, like a lot of different ways.
Yeah, and then this jogging my memory, one of the other ideas for this, the quinoa, like we said, it's a complete protein, so you could just go for here, but one of your smart ideas was just keeping like high quality tinned fish on hand for added protein. So like wild canned salmon or wild canned tuna, like pop it on top of like greens or a situation like this, and you've got another great boost of protein.
Yeah, and you didn't have to cook it.
And you don't have to cook it.
And it's very affordable, so those are all good.
Well, Pamela, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah,
this is so
thanks
great.
for having me.
This gorgeous recipe is available on realsimple.com. It's called Not Fried Rice. This is Pamela Salzman. Her book, Kitchen Matters, available everywhere books are sold. Check it out. There's so many great tips in here. And we'll have more from Pamela in the near future.
Thank you.
So thanks for being here. Guys, cook something. Homework this week. Let's say big pot of grains. Make a big pot of grains, do what you like with them. Porridge, use it as a side, use it in a stir fry, eat it out of the pot, whatever you want to do. But cook it, tag me, tag at RS Cooking School, and we'll see you here next week. So long.